So I talk a lot about your 20s on this podcast. I am fascinated by this era. I'm in it myself. I'm 21, in case you're new. And I have talked about a lot of different things about your 20s, a lot of different things that I feel like we're all kind of thinking or we're all going through, whether it's things that I love about this era and being in this era of my life, or it's the things that I feel like have been completely romanticized about it. And I think it's important to do that because as much as there are definitely fun, exciting parts about being in your 20s, in general, I do love being in this chapter. Don't get me wrong, I am having fun. I am enjoying myself, okay? However, like I've said before, your 20s are also a fucking mess, okay? They are a bit of a nightmare and they can feel really lonely. And I think half of what that isolating feeling that, your 20s is so associated with, I feel like half of that feeling comes from the fact that we feel like we're meant to be stepping into the fun, free, sexy 20s that we've been completely sold that kind of image for. Do you know what I mean? Like in movies and shows, it's like your 20s are like fun, free, sexy 20s. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like it's important to talk about the other sides to it because it does sometimes feel a little bit like a fucking scam because as much, like I said, as they are fun and like all the pros to your 20s, I do feel like they are there. Like it is kind of fun, free, sexy 20s, but it's also a lonely, confusing, overwhelming shit 20s. Do you know what I mean? Like it's both at the same time. And it wouldn't be the era that it is if it didn't have those things. I'm not saying I would necessarily change it. They're just so much harder to navigate than I think we're ever prepared for. When people say their 30s are like the better era, I believe them. I believe that they're a little bit less of a mess. I think it's important to point out some of the shittier sides of it. Otherwise, I do feel like we feel like we're the only people feeling certain things. And around 70% of the people that listen to my podcast and watch these videos are between the ages of 18 and 25. So it feels apt, being in this age and talking about this. It just feels like all my videos are kind of an extension of one big long conversation of what I'm experiencing in my 20s, what I'm seeing people around me experiencing, and just hoping that it kind of resonates. And a massive thing that I think we all struggle with in our 20s, again, it's another cliche that this is what happens in your 20s, but is comparison. Comparison about our jobs, our bodies, our relationships, our friendships, how much money we have, whether we're traveling or we're choosing to study. We look at other people's lives so regularly, and our instant knee-jerk reaction to it is to hold up our life next to their life and start comparing the two. That's just what we do, what does what someone else is doing say about what we're doing? Does it mean that we are behind and that they're further ahead than us? Does it mean that we're growing up too fast and we need to slow down and have more fun because, other people are traveling or going out and dating and experimenting and blah, blah, blah. And maybe, I don't know, you've been with the same person since year 11 in school and you start thinking, am I not experimenting enough? Am I not using my 20s for what they're for? This is just the game that we play with ourselves. Okay, we play this little torture game with ourselves. And I don't think there's anything wrong with observing other people and observing what they're doing and what choices they're making. And even if you want to, judging them a bit. We're all gonna do it. It's kind of human nature. Internally, don't be a bitch, but if you want to judge people and watch what they're doing, go for it. It's interesting, okay? It is. It's human nature to be nosy and wonder what everyone else is up to. But I think the second that you start holding their life up against yours and you start playing the compare and contrast game that we all love to torture ourselves with, that's when I think it's okay, I think that is where the issues come from. That's when it starts to be unhealthy and it starts to be okay, this is no longer just a social observation. I'm just watching what people are doing. This is when okay, it's affecting you. Do you know what I mean? And I felt this loads. There's no person who hasn't felt this. For example, as you probably know if you have watched these podcasts before, I'm not someone who really likes nightlife. I don't really like going out. I never have. It's never been my cup of tea. I've done it occasionally, but like I just don't really have fun doing that, okay? And I've definitely at times been tempted to just kind of make myself go out and partake in that and try and make myself like it. Like I've definitely had phases where I've tried that, but like I just literally don't want to. Like it doesn't appeal to me and I don't want to do it. And that's okay. Like it's hurting no one. Do you know what I mean? But it's definitely made me feel like weird at points. Or, you know, I've had comparison affect relationships I've been in too. I feel like that is, again, inevitable as fuck, especially at this age, because like we just are pretty insecure. Like we just kind of are. And again, unavoidable. Like we're not very old. So generally we're not super secure in who we are. But like, honestly, I think relationships would be so much healthier if social media didn't exist. I think it's genuinely fucked us a bit. Like the ways that social media is linked to like the downfall of so many people's self-esteem in relationships or suspicion in relationships, or like I don't know, I think it's like I think I'd love to be in a relationship where neither of us have social media. Like I think that would be, how much easier would that be? Like think of the amount of things like checking who they're following, checking who they're like, it just is so fucking toxic. Anyway, that's a different conversation. But yeah, relationships I've been in, comparison has like definitely affected me too. Like again, linking it back to like I don't really like going out, like in nightlife. I don't mean leaving the house. You know, where you start comparing yourself to their exes. Like, did they like going out? Were they more fun? Like, am I boring? Am I literally like a grandma? Does it feel like dating a grandma if you're dating me? Like I've I've definitely, like, it's just these things just like happen. Do you know what I mean? We just spiral. It's natural, but it's not fun and it's not healthy. But the thing is, what I find interesting is I think that deep down, we all know that everyone is entirely on their own journey. Everyone's going at their own pace. Everyone is different. Logically, we know there's no point comparing ourselves to people. We know it doesn't matter, and we know that we're all on like a floating rock and we're all just gonna die. And like, there's no fucking point comparing yourself to a girl walking down the street. It is entirely pointless. And logically, we know this. We're all wired so differently, and we all have different cravings and different things we want, different things we enjoy, and we're all going to be on completely different paths. And the world would literally not go around if this wasn't the case. If we all wanted to do the same thing, if we all wanted to be builders, what would the world be? That it wouldn't fucking work. We need to all be different in order for everything to fucking function at the end of the day. What's it called in like you learn about it in science, when like everyone has a different role because it keeps like the whole ecosystem or whatever the fuck going. Like I have no idea what I just said, but you know what I mean. Like it's essential for us to be different. Yet, even though we know this logically, it makes us so uncomfortable to actually like pick our own path and make our own choices when, you know, like they differ from other people's choices. It scares us because we kind of use each other as like guidelines as to like how to act and what to do. Like we look to each other because it's easier. Like there is no rule book, there is no guidebook on like what we're meant to be doing. There is nothing telling us what we're meant to be doing. So it's, you know, natural that we kind of just like look around at everyone else and like, what the fuck are they doing? Like what choices are they making? And obviously that breeds comparison because we start thinking, okay, well, she's fucking like sorted. She's got a boyfriend, bought a house, got a dog. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's natural, but it like it crosses a line and then it becomes like harmful as fuck. And obviously, it does come back to like human nature, like the biological desire to want to be accepted by everyone around us. You know, we feel there's like a risk associated with carving our own path and making our own choices. Like it's scary because like what if people don't like us, you know? If it feels like it's vaguely straying from the pack, we don't want to do it. Biologically, we don't want to do it. It kind of does serve a necessary purpose because it keeps us all, like, as a society from going fully off the rails, that we kind of show each other like what's vaguely fucking normal to do. You know, it keeps us kind of behaving in a somewhat orderly manner. And I think popping your head up every now and then to kind of do a little scan of like, am I all good? Am I like behaving like a normal fucking person? You know, comparing in that way is a human tendency and kind of necessary to stop everyone going off the fucking rails. Naturally, we kind of want to do that, I guess, to an extent. But I think when it gets to the point that I feel like a lot of us are in, especially in this age, where we've got a bad habit of like popping our head up and looking around at what everyone else is doing and comparing ourselves to what they're doing like multiple times an hour, it's like okay, now we're kind of crossing the line and overly comparing to the point where it's taking over your life. Do you know what I mean? To the point where you're not letting yourself do what you want to do because you're constantly checking that it's kind of similar to what's going on around you or something. Do you know what I mean? And I think that can waste years of your life. Like, I think that is something that genuinely like can take over your fucking life, which is kind of scary. I think in our 20s we are prone to doing that too much because it really is our first kind of test run at like self-government. Like, we're still babies. We are still babies. Like, not in a way of like do whatever the fuck you want, you're a baby, like you've got that excuse. Like, you haven't, it's that age where like you haven't got that excuse because you're an adult, but you're also in a lot of ways still kind of a baby, and a lot of what you're doing is like completely brand new to you. It's like, I think that's half the fucking like struggle, is you have to look like you've got your shit together and act like you've got your shit together, but you don't. Like, it's, but then no one really does ever, I guess. But I don't know, I feel like it's amplified when it's your like first few years of like trying everything. Our 20s in a lot of ways are about experimenting, you know, with what we enjoy, what we want, what appeals to us, what kind of future we might want. A lot of trial and error. It's a lot of fucking up, and it has to be, you know, it's a rite of passage. All these cliches about your 20s are so true. Like, they're for experimenting, they're lonely as fuck. Like, everything you hear about your 20s I feel like is just fucking true. And I think it would be impossible to be working all these things out and experimenting with all these things without looking around at what everyone else is doing. You know, like I said, we're nosy. We do want to check out what everyone else is doing, and it is interesting. And it sometimes gives us ideas of what we could do. You know, sometimes you see someone doing something and you're like, shit, I didn't even think about, I don't know, maybe you never really thought about traveling, but someone posted a photo of them in like fucking Indonesia and you're like, I want to go there. I don't know, like sometimes it can help. But obviously, like I said, I think we look too often. Okay, I think we can agree we look too often, we check too often, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, who's to say what they're doing is right anyway? You know, like, we look around at what other people are doing because we feel like we don't know what the fuck we're doing, and we start comparing. But it's like, who's to say that what fucking like Lisa, who you went to school with, has any more of a clue? It's just like one of those things where it's like, there isn't a right or wrong in most of life. So it's like comparing, again, logically we know there's no point because there's no fucking right or wrong. And like, social media has really like, how many minutes into the video was it going to be, let's be honest, before I started blaming social media for everything wrong with the world? Probably not very many minutes. But like, not only do we look around and compare ourselves with what everyone else is doing, like probably everyone has for all of time and all of history. Like, again, it's kind of a human tendency. But not only do we do that out of just human tendency, but we're also now encouraged to do that all the fucking time. Every time we go on our phone, we're now encouraged to put up a front and have our best moments out there, and we're encouraged to play into the whole thing, and we are literally encouraged to make it look like we have our shit together online, and in turn completely damage our self-esteems repeatedly. And I also do think it's important to point out that while I'm talking about social media, people literally go into debt, severe debt, in their 20s, trying to make their lives look like they are something that they're not, trying to present like make themselves look like they're doing cool shit, completely living outside of their means, and they're in fucking debt for their whole life. So I just thought it's worth checking that out there, because sometimes you do think like, oh my god, how are people doing this? A fucking loan. Okay. But yeah, I think we are curious little creatures by nature. We do look around at what people are doing. However, I think sometimes it often comes down to lacking the confidence to trust that we're actually on our own path, on our own journey, and we're doing fine, and we're doing what we're meant to be doing in our own timing. Because I do think trusting that is hard when you're in it. I think when you have hindsight, you can look back. You know, I'm sure everyone has something they can look back on, whether it's like a shitty relationship or like some sort of like hardship where you're like, now I see why that happened, and now, like, you know, it all makes sense. But when you're in that, it's just like, woe is me. Do you know what I mean? It is. So it's just like, it is hard to trust that like you're where you're meant to be right now. And it doesn't matter where Lisa is. It doesn't matter if she's riding a fucking elephant in Indonesia, because you're where you're meant to be, and you will end up where you're meant to be, and you're on your own path. And that's, trusting that is hard, because you're in it right now. You're in the present moment. You can't see how anything's going to pan out. Do you know what I mean? I think that is often why we do all the comparison game at this age, because it's hard to fucking like comfort yourself with like, we're where we're meant to be right now, because it's like, yeah, but what if I'm not? But you are. And I think sometimes like linked to that, self-comparison can be healthy, like looking back at different versions of you in the past and seeing how you've grown. Sometimes that can like kind of remind you of like, okay, we are growing, we are evolving, like things are happening for us. Look how much better we are at this and that, and like blah blah blah. Sometimes that can be a good way, like I said, using hindsight to be like, okay, even though I feel like I'm like, I don't know, doing everything wrong, like clearly I'm not, because this is no longer an issue, and I'm much more confident in this area, and I no longer do this and whatever. You know, it can make you feel proud of yourself, and it can motivate you to like keep going, I guess. And you know, even sometimes comparing yourself to other people sometimes can make you feel better. If I'm being honest, like I might sound like a bitch, but sometimes, like, let's be honest, do you not sometimes compare yourself to other people and you're like, thank fuck? I don't know, I think I sound like a bitch, but like, it's a slippery slope, and I would advise not doing it, because as much as like sometimes it can be positive, generally all it does is knock our self-esteem down a few pegs. Like generally that's all it does. And I think it does just stunt what we're actually meant to be doing. Like I said, like we're actually on our own journey, you know, growing in our own ways, in our own friendships, in our own relationships. And I think constantly pausing the show to go and like watch someone else's and see what they're doing, and like watch your own fucking show. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know, does that make any sense? I don't know if that like analogy made any sense, but I feel like it sometimes does feel like you're in your show and you keep just like turning it off and like watching someone else's, and it's like, but that's theirs, and like you're just sat there watching it while yours is on pause. Like it feels like that, in the sense of like, it's a fucking waste of time. Like theirs is ticking by and you're watching it, when like yours is stuck in season 1, bitch. Did you like my analogy? I don't think I did. I don't think I liked it. But my point is, it's a massive time waster at the end of the day. I think staying in your own lane and staying focused on doing that, and like eyes on the prize, do you know what I mean? It's hard as shit, but it's the only way to go. It's the only way to do it. At the end of the day, like, you know, focusing on your own evolvement. Is that a word? The fuck did I just say? I don't know if that's a word. But your own journey, and learning more about yourself and what you want and where you're going, and like fucking like just looking at that. Like what's important to you? Is it fitness? Is it finding a great partner? Is it gaining a useful skill that you could turn into a job? Is it traveling around Europe so you can experience different cultures? You know, what the fuck what is important to you? Because I think sometimes it's easy to even be like jealous of what other people are doing without even thinking, do you even want to do that? Because like a good example I'm using is like traveling. Like everyone, I feel like a lot of people my age travel, and it's like, I reckon some people are like, wow, look at them traveling the world. Oh, what the fuck am I doing with my life? But it's like, maybe traveling isn't that important to you. And like, have you considered that? Like, because if it was that important to you, you'd probably also be doing it. And like, you're probably doing what you're meant to be doing. So like, But I just feel like whatever you actually want to do is the thing that deserves your attention. You deserve your attention. And I think you want to be so busy and occupied on that you no longer have the time to keep popping your head up every 5 seconds to look at what everyone else is doing. You're busy. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got too much free time on your hands, in a way, if you're comparing all the time. And I think that's kind of the key, to be honest, is working out what you want. You're on your own path, focusing on that, knowing the reason behind what you're doing, you know, learning your why is what they call it, like what you're doing and what's the why, and getting lost in that. Do you know what I mean? That is a good thing to get lost in. Getting lost in the comparison game is a waste of time. It's not getting you nearer anything, and I think it's just essentially a really bad habit. Do you know what I mean? Like, it starts off as like a natural thing, like out of curiosity, and then it just becomes unhealthy and becomes a habit. And I think a good way to kind of get out of that bad habit is to focus in on yourself and like something that you actually want to do. And I feel like there's so much pressure at this age to know what you want, like your long-term job or career to be. And it's like you either need to be working your way up to it, or you need to be studying for it, or be at uni for it, or like you need to have that plan in motion. Your career needs to be on the go already, now. Do you know what I mean? It's like working and earning money whilst figuring shit out kind of feels looked down upon in a lot of ways, even though that's what most people are doing. And a lot of people that have gone to uni, whether they're there now or they're like 50 and they're using hindsight, would say, I would recommend waiting, or I kind of wish I waited, or now I feel like I'm in it, so I'm going to finish it, but I kind of don't know why I'm doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, again, we know that logically. I think sometimes it is just like, you have to keep feeding yourself the logical shit that you know, because our brain likes to do this fun little thing where it forgets everything that makes sense, and it just is like delusional lie. Here's something to make you miserable. Woo! But I feel like people look down on you if you're figuring shit out a lot of the time, and you're often made to feel like you're behind in life, and like, but shouldn't you be doing this? But shouldn't you be working it out? Like, but what's your next step? What are you doing next? What's your plan? And every time someone asks you, whether it's about your career plans or when you're gonna find a partner you can settle down with, or I don't know, whatever the fuck someone thinks you should be doing, because apparently they know what you should be doing and you don't. Every time someone asks you that, it sends you down like the fucking spiral of like, shit, well, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know what how am I meant to find a fucking partner? Like, I don't know. But like, people always want to know what your next step is. Like, it's like a tradition for like older people to just be like, so what's the plan? Travel, uni, work, marriage, kids. Like, they just have to. It's like they have like this reflex of like their mouth opens and that has to come out. They can't stop it. They have to be like, so what the fuck are you doing with your life? They can't just say like, hello. Hello, you look like you're, you know, really happy. So what hobbies do you have? Like, what do you enjoy? Do you like cooking? Like, they can't ask you that. It has to be something that makes you question your entire life. It just has to be. But I am such a big believer in, as long as you know what you're doing and you're on the same page as yourself with whatever you're doing, that's all that matters. Okay, you know, as long as you know where you're at and kind of what you're doing to some degree, it's fine. You know, people don't need to see your vision that you have for your life. They don't need to know what that is. It's kind of not their business. It's not their business. And I don't even mean you need some big like layout plan in your head. I just mean knowing kind of what you're doing right now and why you're doing it and where you're at, and having your like why, like your own reason that makes sense to you. Having that, I think, stops you from being so easily like shaken when people question it. It stops that spiral from being so severe. And I think it's what keeps you minding your own business and staying in your own lane, which is always a positive thing to be doing. I think it's much easier to do that when you're on the same page as yourself. That's all that matters. It's all that matters. Even if you're in a chapter of being unsure and trying things out and not knowing what the fuck is going on, that's the chapter that you're in. And as long as you know with yourself, like right now I'm in this chapter where I don't know what the fuck's going on, and that's where we're at. You know, you're working out what makes you happy, you're working out what you enjoy. That's the chapter you're in. That's your answer, that's your why. This is what I mean, like, you don't need to be like, this is my big plan. I just mean like where you're at right now and what's going on with you, and you just need to know that for yourself. And it's okay if you don't really know what the fuck is going on, but like, that's between you and you know? And honestly, those chapters are pretty fucking necessary, because like I said, we're not born knowing what to do. So I'd like to know, how are we meant to work out what we're meant to be doing and get to this place that everyone so desperately wants us to be in, if we can't have a chapter of being unsure and trying to guess and trying to work it out and trying stuff? You can't. It's like, how am I meant to be a chef if I can't learn how to cook? I'm just meant to be a chef? No, you have to fucking, like, you have to work shit out. And if that's the chapter you're in, then that's the chapter you're in. And honestly, that's a pretty solid fucking chapter. Like, it's a pretty necessary part of the book. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't just like skip that one. So in no way, shape or form would I feel ashamed if I were you, if that's what you're doing right now, because I kind of think that is literally what life is anyway. Just fucking trial and error until you die. Because there is no guidebook, and I don't even think following each other as like guideposts is even necessarily always smart either, because some people aren't a good guidepost to be following, you know? Because if they're in their 20s, they likely don't know what the fuck they're doing either, so I wouldn't necessarily have what they're doing on such a pedestal, because it's likely also a big fat guess from them. And B, it isn't their life you're trying to live, it's yours. So like, why do we care so much? And again, it's like, logically we know comparing your journey to theirs is fucking pointless, because they're a different person to you. You can't it's to compare you to them is to imply that they're even remotely comparable things when they're not. You're different people, and like, yes, people at their core are quite often quite similar, and like, we're all kind of one and the same to a degree. We're also not comparable beings at all in a lot of fucking ways, and in the ways that we usually do compare, they're the ones that we shouldn't be comparing. Like, for example, what you look like. We look different and we're all different people. Comparing what you look like to someone else is completely pointless. And again, I think just staying in your lane, minding your own business, you're going to work out a lot of these answers for yourself anyway, you know? I don't think looking to other people is the way to work out what you should be doing, in my opinion. And I think it's so easy to get distracted. We are surrounded by distractions, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I have caught myself an embarrassing amount of times getting caught up wondering why other people are doing what they're doing, why they're making the choices they're making. Why is she dating him? She is clearly wasting her time. She should dump him. She should go find a job. That's what I think. Or why is he so desperate? Why is he coming off so desperate? Like, he needs to work on himself. He needs to work on being comfortable alone. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have caught myself doing that kind of thing an embarrassing amount of times, where I don't know, again, I think it's just a bad habit. And again, I think I do it more when I'm feeling a bit shittier about what I'm doing. Because again, people that are busy on focusing on their own shit aren't generally the ones going around comparing all the time, because they're fucking busy doing their own thing. But like, I have definitely caught myself doing that. And when I tell you it's an active effort some days to be like, Brooke, do you not have your own fucking issues to focus on? Do you not have other things you need to be doing right now? Like, do you not have a job to go to? Why the fuck are you sat there thinking that, bro? Because maybe it's just easier to like think about other people and what they should be doing than thinking about what I should be doing. I don't know. I should probably work that out in therapy. Or maybe someone like makes a comment and it sends me down that like overthinking spiral, that we all know and love, where I'm just like, why the fuck did they say that? Like, it will just like go round and round and round. Like, what did they mean by that? Is that something everyone else thinks? Is that something I've missed? Is it really obvious? Are they right? Are they wrong? Like, it just all starts ruminating around in the brain, in the membrane. Again, this is so distracting and such a fucking waste of time. And sometimes I love it. Okay, sometimes I do love to observe other people and what they're doing. It is like a little hobby of mine, I'm not gonna lie. But sometimes it's like not an unhealthy thing, it's just fucking fascinating. Like, I'm just a nosy bitch. But there is like a point where I know, like, just nip it in the bud. Do you know what I mean? Like, fucking stop, just ending that thought, starting a new one. I'm done with that one. Because sometimes it's like I just kind of want something to be pissed off about, and it's 100% a me problem. But I think I used to be a lot worse with it, and I used to let things like cycle around in my brain for ages, like all day. It would just be like, what did they mean? Blah, 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 blah. Like, just go round and round. And I think something I have really worked on is like shortening that cycle. Well, like, obviously if someone makes a comment, it's always gonna like upset you or piss you off. Like, you're a person with feelings, you can't stop that from happening. But I think what you can do is work on shortening that time frame of where you go from feeling that pissed off or insecure emotion or whatever to being back on your own path, being like back in your own lane and focused and like moved on. I think it's like working on shortening that little time lag. Like, I think you have to learn to kind of like discipline your emotions and your thoughts, because thoughts aren't fact. Again, half of what we think is complete utter bullshit. Like, your thoughts, you don't have to like believe them, and you don't have to let them ruminate for that long. Like, it's so hard, but you are in control of your thoughts. And I think you have to learn how to like fucking discipline them. I don't know why I'm whipping them. That's a bit of a fucking... Otherwise, you're no longer in control, and you're just like spiraling forever. And I think the ego comes into play with it as well. You know, wanting to be perceived a certain way. And I think it takes kind of dropping the ego a bit to be okay with like only you understanding what you're doing. Like, that's quite uncomfortable. And I think it's coming from like the ego, when we want everyone else to like agree with like that we're okay and we're on our own path, and like people think it's fine what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? For example, like if people are passing judgment that like you haven't gone to uni, me, or that you're single, me. And I just like, okay, I don't really get judgment for either of those things, to be fair. Sometimes uni, I never really get shit for being single, but then I haven't really been single that long. Maybe in like a few months someone will be like, Brooke, are you like planning on dying alone or like what? But I think to mind your own business and to like untether yourself from the need for everyone to fucking get it and see your vision and tell you that what you're doing is okay, like that takes some work on the ego. Do you know what I mean? But you know, if it comforts you at all, it's normal as fuck, and everyone around you. The thing is, what I find really weird is that we compare ourselves all the time to like people that maybe we're jealous of, or people that we feel like are doing better than us or are further ahead in life than us. But what you never think about, I don't know about you, but I never think other people probably think that about me, and then about that. Like, I never think that anyone would look at me and be negatively like comparing themselves to me in any way, shape, or form. Like, no, of course they wouldn't. Yeah, I'm doing it to people, and they probably have no idea that anyone would be doing that to them, because they also feel like, well, why would someone compare themselves to me? Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and that's why I never think like someone's looking at me thinking, wow, she's got her shit together, because I know I don't. So if that comforts you in any way, shape, or form, we're all just as clueless as one another. And someone probably does compare themselves to you and think you're further ahead in some way, but like, I think that's just evidence that like no one is, because none of us, I don't know, I maybe some people do walk around thinking like everyone wants to be me, but like I personally don't do that. I don't think many people probably do that. But anyway, I am gonna go because I've talked for so long. But thank you for listening, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this made you feel a little bit seen, a little bit normal. That's kind of the aim of these, is talk about things that people feel like is just them and tell you that it's not. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next week.